Hello and welcome back. I am John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this may seem weird. You may have clicked on this not knowing what this is and thinking, is this like an indie movie? I have no idea what this is. What is he reviewing? What is this? What have you done, sir? What nonsensical. Well, if you look at the stuff, now I know this is really hard to do because the way that YouTube throws algorithms, who knows when you're watching this. Uh, I did drop this the same day as another movie, and it was for a reason. I kind of tied things in together, and I basically, we'll get there. I know you're like, what? Get cut to the chase. This is why you don't have any viewers. And sit down. Give me a chance here. Everybody's different. We're all the different cup of tea. I might be yours. Give me a chance. Blind film critic. Where else are you gonna find one? So I got two screeners. Both of them had a connective tissue. The first one that I got, I wasn't thrilled about jumping into. And then the second one came along and I was like, well, okay, so that feels like a completely different angle. Neither of them had audio description. So I feel like I could dive into both of those and do them both at the same time. Sort of like two reviews on the same day. And sort of like counterpoints to each other. Just in case I don't like one of them or whatever, it feels like I'm across the spectrum of this topic. And then one of the films revealed within it that there was another film that I needed to watch. And that is this film. So because I watched the film Our Dad, Danielle, which in that documentary revealed that the main feature of that film, Danielle, aka DJ, wrote a book that was made into a screenplay for a movie called Leaves of the Tree, and it stars Eric Roberts, Sean Young, and Armand Asante. My interest was immediately piqued, and then I found out it was on Tubi. So, yes. In case you're wondering, is he that kind of critic? I absolutely am that kind of critic. So this is Leaves of the Tree. It's currently available on Tubi. Of course it doesn't have audio description. Did you hear the cast I gave you? To be fair though, not to just throw unnecessary shade on Leaves of the Tree, Tubi introduced audio description about a year and probably about 15, 16 months ago. And really their number has been pretty flat. They've had between 100 and 150 titles. That's including TV shows. That's titles. When you think about their whole library is probably 10,000 titles. They have about 100 to 150. It's really a small percentage. And they don't seem to really be heavily interested in growing it or applying more audio description. And most of those titles, I always try to tell people in the blind community, we have to create a metric for it. So anytime you have a friend who is even sighted and is using audio description, people who are like, how can we help you? It's like, I use audio description, turn it on, see what's going on. The more metric we create for something and show that there's a demand for something, that's how Hollywood works, is if there's a demand for something, they'll make more of it. That's why there are a bajillion NCIS TV shows, is because there's a demand for them. If nobody was watching the first NCIS, there wouldn't have been spinoffs. So that's just life. That's how that works. So the same is true of Tubi, except for the fact that Tubi puts the majority of those are movies that nobody's really ever heard of. They're all sort of like Tubi originals, straight to streaming films that aren't great, like Shark Side of the Moon, which is about people going to space and fighting the sharks on the moon. It's like an asylum movie. These are not movies that people are looking for. So it's really hard to create that metric on Tubi when those are the choices that you're making. Occasionally they get a few Hollywood titles in there that people might be looking for, but most of the time not. And Tubi is very supportive of films like this, where it's sort of an independent film, likely never had a distributor of any note. I know that there are independent people who help sort of quote distribute. I don't really think that that's the same thing as saying, I don't think whatever this movie has is the same thing as saying, my film's being distributed through Warner Brothers. This is not, when we think of distributor, we think of that. We don't think of, well, it got me onto Tubi. So, but just because something is independent doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Plenty of films have been made for little to no budget, and have gone on to make an excessive amount of money just because somebody happens to pick them up and see something in them. Granted, a lot of those are horror movies. The ones you can immediately think of that were made for like dirt cheap, like no money, no location, Paranormal Activity, Skinamarink, those kind of movies, horror movies. But they went on to, make considerably more than their budget. So it's not like you can't make a movie for $10,000 and then end up just blowing it out of the box office. But Leaves of the Tree did choose Eric Roberts, Sean Young, and Armand Asante, which on paper seems like, 3 actors we've heard of. But when was the last time you watched a movie starring Eric Roberts, Sean Young, or Armand Asante? I'll wait. Go ahead and put that in the comments. Think about it and be like, when was the last time I watched a movie starring Eric Roberts, Sean Young, or Armand Asante? And if you say Blade Runner for Sean Young, you're just supporting the fact, remember when that movie was made? So if your answer to Sean Young is Blade Runner, you have just supported what I'm saying, which is that these are 3 actors who, as of 2016, would have said yes to this film. I'm sure their paycheck was probably a little bit more than that guy down the street, but also I'm sure they're happy to be working in film. So there you go. It's an interesting story because in the documentary Art Danielle, we see that it was being written at the time during like a medical crisis, and coming out of a medical crisis and sort of like a rehabilitation phase when you're trying to, take it easy and not do much. And so you write, and this is what he came up with at the time before he transitioned. I believe this is still before. I should still be saying she, but one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is because I want to talk about the usage of the name Danielle here, which is interesting that it was put into the film. So, almost like wish dictating, like you're like putting your wishes on paper and throwing them out there and hoping they come back to you. And there's a character, Eric Roberts, who is married to Sweetness. Sean Young, which I learned in the movie, is what DJ called their wife. I'm really uncomfortable saying he again, even though I know this was written pre open transition. So telling the story, navigating it. So that's why there's representative here. In case you're wondering, you're like, well, isn't that, you reviewed it, it was a trans documentary, why isn't this? Because it was representative of the place and time that they were at the time that they wrote it. So it's going to reflect Eric Roberts and Sean Young being the husband-wife couple here. And there's a story that weaves around with basically like a tree of life scenario, where there's like a tree that with healing properties. We started this sort of like weird, I was a little thrown back. I was like, am I in the right movie? Because they made it sound like in the documentary when they were like, oh yeah, they used our house, that's our house. I was like, oh, it's one of those films. It's just like really low budget and they kind of just shot it in the neighborhood, and it must be weird to be like, yeah, Sean Young was in my bathroom. Just like, it's cool. But no, there was this like sort of like period scene where it was back like 100+ years, and there's a lot of it that's like in Italian, So unfortunately, my grade's going to be unwatchable. It just is. There's a lot here that I didn't understand because again, it's a narrative feature, and I have to be able to follow the plot all the way through. And when people start speaking in another language, that's not good for me. Uh, and unfortunately, there wasn't like the unnecessary like translator walking around who was just saying the exact same thing and be like, "What did he say? Oh, he said this." You know, so there were just scenes where things were said, and I was like, I have no idea what just happened. Um, but the life of a blind film critic. Uh, Eric and Sean go there, and Armand, I think, is already there. There's this guy who's like protecting the tree. We find out, and it's, uh, does the whole thing's like, does it really have these healing properties? Is it really going to, or is this, you know, all shenanigans? And what else might it heal? Might it heal this relationship between uh, Eric's character, whose name I've literally forgotten, and Sean Young's sweetness. Now, when they started using Danielle for a character in this film, that's when I thought it was interesting because I was like, oh, that's the name. Sometimes when you like a name, you put it in things. Like when you're writing things, you're like, you know what? I really like the name blank. And then you're writing, and then suddenly later on down the line, you have an opportunity to like have a kid, and you're like, I've really always liked that name. So blank is now the name of my kid. And then you look back at the things you've written, and your kid's like, wait a minute, I'm in this book that you wrote. And you're like, yeah, I've always liked that name, you know? And it's almost like seeing like the beginnings of, you know, I would say the roots of the tree here are beginning with the use of Danielle. You had, you know, any possible name you could have picked, and Danielle is a character in this. So, also their daughter is in this. The actual daughter of DJ's actual daughter is in this film as well. So, not bad. Not a bad actress either. I wasn't like cringing at it. I wasn't like, oh my god, this girl should not be on camera. It's so unfortunate that she, you know. No, I just thought she was fine. Actually, in general, I thought everybody was fine. I went into this film kind of like on a like with a giggle because honestly, it's Eric Roberts, Sean Young, and Armand Asante. I'm not gonna say it's all great. I'm not gonna say all the dialogue lands. The editing could be better. Could just be the flow could be a little bit better. It does kind of feel like it drags in terms of a film, in terms of getting the narrative there. The score kind of felt like it was written by somebody who was writing a score for the first time. Like when you have like a friend who's really interested in writing music scores for a movie, which really helped me out in film school. But then again, I was in film school, you know, so it's like I made a 3-minute short film that had a score. I was the only one in the class that had a score. I was like, haha, I know musicians. Haha. Sucks to suck. But like when you go into like the big time world, I don't know that my best friend is my best, you know, or friend, whatever, is the best use of, you know, that would be, yeah, why don't we do a feature together? And the one with the big budget, I'll let you try your hand at feature score writing. So it's not, I've heard worse, but it's just not really memorable or supportive. There's no really swells. There's not really anything that feels like it's supporting the theme of the scene. It just kind of feels like music was written and was put in, and it's like nice, and it's sort of on hold at times. There's something really here that's wrong. I didn't hate the movie. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen worse movies in 2024 than I've seen here that were made by studios that are like aggressively terrible. Films that had budgets and don't make any sense and actually have bad acting in them, even though they had budgets to hire better actors. And this film has 3 people who have given good performances in the past, but are definitely past their prime, and people are not typically offering them gigs for the kind of major studio productions that they used to do. But I thought they all showed up and did really nice work, which was kind of I'm so interested to see Sean Young. So interested to see where Sean Young was. And this is, granted, this is like 18, not 18, it's 8 years ago. Added another 10. Um, but still, not bad. I don't know that her and Eric Roberts have like the most chemistry in the world, but I thought they were fine. Yeah. I thought Eric Roberts was okay here. Armand was fine. This is, you could do worse. Certainly on Tubi. You can do worse on Tubi than to accidentally stumble into this movie. I promise you that. I have, and I've seen it. Tubi is basically YouTube for filmmakers. If you can get your shit onto Tubi, they're just like, hey, I don't know. Like the threshold for quality is very just like nebulous. Like, you know, you got a camera, you got some we go make a movie. So I don't know, but I feel like we've done sort of like this fountain of youth, tree of life thing before. So I was interested to see maybe like what is different, especially when you're facing that look at mortality yourself. Like, what is the angle that you're bringing here? I didn't really feel like that was necessarily like a unique angle. I feel like this is, again, kind of sort of things that have been done or heard or seen before. But considering this is a patent lawyer, which, by the way, he wrote into the film, they, DJ wrote into the film at the time. Anyway, God damn it. I'm sorry. This is a very interesting film to talk about, but I never watched this otherwise, and I think kudos to getting that out there and getting me interested in something. And tangentially, because of the other thing that I liked, which I feel a lot more comfortable giving documentaries grades when they don't have audio description, because it's like sometimes they have a subject material that is worth learning about, and there's something there, and I don't want to stop somebody from. But here, it's like it's a narrative feature, and I know it's independent. I don't think they know what audio description is. If you've never been around a blind person, I don't think you're thinking about their accessibility. I was sighted before, so I get what that's like to not know that there's anything out there. I don't expect necessarily everybody in the entire world who's ever making every single tiny micro budget independent feature to add audio description to a whole bunch of things that they're just hoping they can get on VOD or Tubi or somewhere, that somebody will see their movie. I think it's great when they do. You know, every once in a while I want to get something that for film festival purposes has made themselves accessible, likely to match the requirements of a festival that has accessibility minimums. But I wasn't expecting that here, especially knowing how few titles. Actually, I've seen the list of titles. They have it. You can click on it. And I knew this title didn't have audio description because I've been checking that list fairly regularly. And this is an old film, so I'm sure I would have seen it on there. Yeah. So I've completed my journey with DJ/Danielle. I definitely check out the documentary Our Dad Danielle, which is debuting on VOD when I'm reviewing this. So you should be able to watch that now. You should be able to watch my review of that, which will give you more context on the person who wrote the screenplay for this, and maybe see some of those threads. I think it's an interesting sort of companion piece if you watch Our Dad Danielle and you're like, I want to kind of see, like, dive more into who DJ is as a person. But Danielle Joy as a person. And if you do, then great. You know, seriously, I thought I was going to come in here and laugh at an Eric Roberts, Sean Young, and Armand Asante movie, which is obvious. I mean, if you can see my sort of tone, and I really am all about not hiding my bias. And I think that's, if we're all here to be, there's like 1,000 YouTube critics, and the only thing that we have that makes us different is what makes us unique. And I have to embrace the fact that this is who I am. And I did. I giggled. Uh, and maybe I shouldn't have, because I didn't think they were that bad. So, lesson learned. But unfortunately, yeah, you have a lot of Italian in this movie, and I can't get past that. So as a blind film critic, whose audience is largely visually impaired / blind people, unfortunately my grade is unwatchable, but that doesn't mean this is the worst movie I've seen in 2024. It's not the worst movie on Tubi. So, I mean, like, there are a lot of things that it's not. Would I, like, say, absolutely, oh my God, this was... And it's not that either. But it was better than I expected, but it's still not like, wow, this is really underrated. How was this not nominated for an Oscar? It's not in that territory either. It's just fine. It is fine. It's fine. Yeah. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Man, if you clicked on this and you watched, you got all the way down, I wish I could give you a prize. Like, imagine me giving you a virtual hug. Maybe you'll give me one by subscribing. But, yeah, maybe at least something good came out of this, and now there's a review of Leaves of the Tree on YouTube. There you go. It's the weirdest review you've ever watched in your entire life, but it exists. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the other side.